let's go. All right, Mikey boy, we're back in here. I got you in here for episode 3. You've now seen all 3 versions of our sweet room in here.
This is awesome.
Yep.
Even smells good in here.
And you've almost gone 3 for 3 with every time you've come in here, different employer. Like you were right on the cusp of the first one where you're still with Estes, but I think you were at EFW at that time. But yeah, it was almost 3 episodes, 3 different employers, but Estes, EFW, and now
the DDC Group.
DDC Group, man.
Yeah. It was. It's been a wild ride over the last 6 months, really. Like making a decision to make the change. It was. I was 26 years with the Estes organization, and just
pretty embedded.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done anything that long in my life.
It almost becomes a version of your identity when you're there that long. Like part of you has that Estes crest on you. You know what I mean? You're embedded there.
Yeah.
You know the family, the ownership group, the people that have worked there. There's a lot of tenure there.
Yeah, and it becomes hard to think about, walking away from that. And I always thought, am I going to do? Because I've got a few gallons left in the tank, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So 10, 15 years, whatever it is. I've got young kids. And I thought, am I going to do 40 years? And I thought, always sort of contemplated what that might look like. But anyway, the opportunity came along. I had a history with DDC. When I was VP of Administration for Estes, DDC was a service provider. And I got to know those guys really well. And, ended up.
You were part of probably evaluating them and bringing them to the table at that time because you were doing a lot of like BPO-esque work internally at an LTL carrier, tying a lot of departments together, making things hum, making sure, the right hand's talking to the left hand.
Yeah, the company had made the decision at the time, it had already made the decision to bring, to outsource freight bill processing to DDC. And so when there was no VP of administration at the time. There were 3 different areas of the business that were all under separate leadership. I became the first VP of administration and then pulled in different areas into administration. And one of them that I fought for was freight billing because it was under operations.
Like, why would you ever fight for that? That's like a whole headache in itself. Now it feels like my wife where she's just a problem hoarder. And you're like, you know what? I really love these problems in LTL. I'm ready to take on a new problem. Give me billing because that is seamless.
Well, it was the beginning of it all. It was at the end of it. My biggest KPI was, outstanding receivables, whatever representation.
Like DSO
over 60, over 90, over 30, whatever. And, at any given moment, there were a few $100 million on the street in a company the size of Estes.
When you were internally, and this is just my curiosity, who were your biggest defenders on like DSO? Was it individual shipper that contracted with you, or was it having to deal with intermediaries? And an intermediary could be an individual 3PL or even having to go through like a CAS audit or US Bank to collect your money because they're a payment intermediary, not necessarily a reseller intermediary. So like, where did you find the DSO culprit just internally, like that was maybe harder to deal with?
It was, I don't know that I can point to a group of offenders, but I would say the issue was, it was what I would call the dirty AR. There was clean, collectible. I realized very quickly it was hard to figure out, is this money that's just, we need to have a financial conversation, or is there an impediment? The customer believes that the bill isn't right, or there's some magic number that hasn't.
So clean for you, clean AR is they gave me a clean remittance that was detailed on how to apply the cash per pro number or freight bill. And there was it wasn't filled with short pays. It wasn't filled with junk. There was a lot of match in that reconciliation. Is that fair?
Or even before they pay us, maybe a collections person reaches out and has a conversation, and they say, hey, seasonality, cash flow constraints, work with me, can we work out a plan? To me, that's a pure financial conversation.
How many people did you run into where they were just like, oh, I was unaware, and you were like, man, this person just got a bad process internally. They're not a bad payer. They just suck at internally managing a process, and now it's bleeding into my network.
A lot. On the small business side, like any, a lot of small businesses don't have really, great processes. So it's a little bit of, what's the hottest fire at the moment. And so stuff would just get in a stack, and they go, oh, send me the bill again. Right. So we had a lot of resend the invoices.
I always compare running an SMB to like, I'm a forest manager, and I'm always going to have fires in my forest. I'm just trying to prevent it from burning down the forest. So I will focus on the biggest fire first. There's always going to be little ones. I'll contain those.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the others would be like, I wrote an article about this at one time where I was in that role from 2011 to 2017, and a lot of things were being automated. Like the universe was trying to put technology around everything, and they were washing out a lot of the really smart, talented people. And so it's like, upload your stuff in our portal, and all this integration and all that kind of stuff. And then it was all designed for the happy path.
Mm-hmm.
And then when something became an exception, that exception bucket wasn't clearly, owned maybe. So that was a big culprit. Yeah. But it was the dirty AR, the stuff where it was like the customer generally in some way believed that there was an issue, whether or not it was a valid issue. We had to step to the table and sort of show or fix it. Mm-hmm. And, breaking those into two buckets, they're two very different workflows entirely. So anyway, a lot of that originates with the bill of lading. So I realized that very quickly, and I said, I want the freight billing process. Mm-hmm. And so got it away from operations.
And that was before there was even thoughts of e-bill lading or digitizing that. So you really stepped into that where you had a true front-end problem, a mid-tier problem, back-end problem. There was just a little bit of chaos everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, there was EDI. There was the, we hardly got any 211s, right? That's the legit LTL EDI bill lading set. But a lot of companies, because everything's kind of provisioned for the truckload world, we would get 204s, and that would be kind of our, skeleton bill of lading that we would begin with. But no, there was no electronic BOL or anybody talking about API bill of ladings at the time.
So that's funny. When we were going down the payment process, and now we've got this thing alpha testing, and I love our payments module. But when I was meeting with individual carriers, understanding like, what's your ideal state or the bee's knees for receiving money, every one of them was like, man, if you could send it to me in EDI 820.
Yeah, remittance.
That's it.
That's the remittance.
In my head, and I was with Joe McGee, the guy who founded the payments company we purchased. And I could just see him thinking like, hold on. And EDI 820 to you is like, we just George Jetson, you know what I mean? I'm in the future. This is ideal state. And I'm like, what about API or other mechanisms? Let's not let how we've done everything rule how we're going to do everything in the future. Right? Like, let's think about this. There's better ways than this, but that really told me something. They were like, the payables process and receiving money for LTL carriers is so rough and so fragmented that just getting a 30-year-old technology to send me a digital remittance via EDI would be my holy grail.
Well, it's a lot better than all the random.
It is, and I wouldn't argue with that point, but it was really eye-opening to me. Like, holy smokes!
Yeah,
we're doubling down on 1980s technology to say this is the future of 2020s LTL.
Yeah, there's so many systems that are set up to
do it and handle it. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
and I get that, but like,
I think as LTL carriers change and move away from the 400, a lot of LTL carriers have, on their roadmap, by some year in the future, completely off, and they're sort of limbing it down. Right, the LTL, the AS400 is this. It was the true operating system for LTL for many companies in the industry for many, many years. I think, you almost have to take it down one limb at a time. You get down to a trunk to where that's sort of your core operating, system. But then you'll have to live with that for a little while and then eventually move on. But as that changes, then you're going to see a whole bunch of new sprouts and ways to ingest information, and API will become maybe the more go-to, but they're still tethered to that.
Because today we'll take an EDI consumption and convert it to API.
Yeah.
Like that's not out of this world. And you can do a lot of that. I'm just trying to get them more to think about the future of this and not rely solely on that.
Yeah. Yeah. APIs are, we would have thought, as mature as they are at the moment, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Well, you still got, look at what FedEx is doing right now. They're migrating or trying to get their customers to migrate off their old SOAP API onto RESTful APIs. And RESTful APIs are obviously a lot better. But I think there's a new challenge LTL carriers have, which is external platforms like us. And where does a bulk of that customer density live that you're getting? And like, have you communicated these changes? Do you know how these changes are going to impact revenue? Have you thought about the downstream impacts, right?
Yep.
And I see a lot, this is not mutually exclusive to any one carrier like a FedEx. Everybody in this industry is a culprit of doing this at one time or another. I just saw like Mountain Valley just got acquired, right, from the GLS group. This is like their third acquisition in whatever 4 years. They're going back to the Mountain Valley scat code. Just something as little as a scat code change impacts how I connect to you as an external platform, or anybody, or any 3PL for that matter. So you got to do a lot of sweeping around the corners to make sure you're not impacting daily revenue on how customers are getting exposed to you. And that's a new frontier within LTL as a whole.
Yeah. And you guys are sitting kind of in the, in the vortex of all that stuff. I mean, you're seeing, because you do business with a lot of these LTL, you mean that it's a lifeline. Right?
It is.
I mean, you're a go-to market, significant go-to market channel for them. So, I mean, I imagine you're seeing a lot of those struggles.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about what you're seeing the NMFTA doing, right? Standardizing APIs for the first time ever with like uniform e-bill rating 2.0, preliminary freight charges that I think is huge, standardizing API invoice, right? All really good things for the industry.
Yeah.
But even though you come up with a really good idea, you now have the next phase of that, which is like, I could think of a cool product today, but I can't think of how to manufacture it, right? So now you have to manufacture the results you want out of the standardization of these APIs. So now how do you get somebody to adopt this? And that's where I view the value of MyCarrier is we've built a proving ground or test track. There's now a dense number of customers, right? On any given month, you have 10,000 plus shippers. That's a lot to say, hey, now I could rapidly adopt e-bill of lading because now I can go to my partner at MyCarrier and I can plug this in here. Now I can plug in pre-pickup visibility, preliminary freight charges, and see how the market reacts to that and see how I shine commensurate to my competition. So like I see in the very near future here, working with external platforms like us to make sure you're the, like, as Estes would say it, the brightest bulb in that tree to make sure you show off the best. To me, that's going to be the next revolution of customer experience. And I know this today, like when I shop and buy things online, I will buy something that is more expensive on Amazon because the delivery experience is very consistent and guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't mind that.
The whole experience, maybe.
Yes.
I mean, you could probably, like, we could have a race and buy something within 45 seconds. And, everything about the way your address pops up to which credit card to use, it's all like, it's pretty well engineered.
Yes. And I think we're on the precipice of that stage being set in LTL to really make a quantum leap. And when I say quantum leap, it's catching up to their counterpart, which in my opinion, the closest modality to LTL is parcel. It's a spoken hub model. It's all predicated on pickup and delivery of several individual P&D locations.
Yeah.
Consolidating at a hub and moving it to a delivery hub, right? It's just not palletized, but it's the most similar market we have from a complexity of transaction standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a level of complexity and call it dysfunction that still exists in LTL that's greater than parcel. Parcel's a pretty well-oiled machine, but you're right.
It's not perfect. It goes through its ebbs and flows, but it's a whole lot better than what we got.
Yeah, and that's probably the, that's the game to chase when you look at all the experiences and that they're creating and the way they create it. And then to your point, companies like Amazon that even take it to the next level. They'll take an experience with a parcel carrier that's not them even, and they'll elevate the experience.
Oh yeah.
Through whatever the way they
even just like the way they handle their returns. It's getting returned by UPS, but the fact that I can print the label and have that visibility, I could drop it off at a UPS store. I could pay a premium to have them come pick it up from me. Like those options are there to integrate external network with the same level of visibility your internal network provides.
Yeah.
And LTL is missing that, in my opinion, just an interline. How screwed up has interline been forever from a visibility perspective? I see it in my platform, and I can't translate, layer, and do that for everybody. It's all different. Oh, I marked it as delivered because I gave it to my partner, but we don't use the same tracking number. I didn't displace and update the tracking number. Oh, here's tracking link A, here's tracking link B. I don't even know how the invoice is going to turn out. Like, I think there's a huge thing on just that little niche right there.
Yeah, the only reason that has probably become less of a problem is because there's less interline nowadays, right? Like carriers have gotten bigger and they go more places direct. And years ago, 25% of everything you shipped or maybe greater was truly an interline shipment. Whereas now, so it's still a problem.
Yeah.
It's just that because of the consolidations and carriers getting larger, I mean, all these issues, it was one of the reasons I got excited about coming over on this side of the fence. I mean, the DDC Group, so I was with Estes for 26 years, including EFW, in the business almost for 35. And, coming over to lead shipping and logistics and kind of take it to the next level. It was a great opportunity. You mentioned earlier kind of the bit of home, or it's kind of like, I was part of the Estes institution for a long time. And so to leave that, you want to leave the right way. You want it to feel right. You want to feel like you're kind of, I legitimately look at it as a bit of a retirement. And, still hopefully get invited back to family reunions, so to speak.
Yeah.
And be able to go and try something different and leverage all of that experience. But I see, and the DDC Group, a lot of people in LTL, they see us as freight bill processing. We own a lot of the freight. We do a lot of the freight bill processing in LTL, and we've got a few things going now where that number, our share of that market will get even higher. So it's a big part of what we do. But really what we do is, we want to work with LTL companies and other transportation companies to look at processes, look at really the customer experience. When I came into, there was no administration department. When I came in to run administration, and I was not an administration guy, but I was a process guy, I quickly realized that whole back office was full of customer experience opportunities. There are all these little snags and pockets of just exception work that either we weren't getting to, or we weren't getting to fast enough, or we didn't have great analytics around that. I see now through a different lens. I realized how well we could elevate the customer experience by going to work on a lot of that stuff. And I look forward to doing that, honestly, into the industry for a lot of our clients. And we're doing a lot of it today. So I think, we have a strong reputation in freight bill processing. And some of that is electronic, where it's kind of intelligent document processing. Some carriers were keying right into their system, and that's what they want. We can do all different sorts of things. But the real opportunity is to go and sit down and say, hey, let's spend a day. Let's get a whiteboard. Let's look at your, kind of some hot spots that you've got that you're struggling with, and let us come in and figure out how to solution that for you.
Yeah.
And, and we talked earlier a little bit, AI is kind of eating the world. I said something I get made fun of a little bit, but I'll say it again. A sandwich isn't a good sandwich today unless it's got a little AI on it, right?
Yeah.
Like people want AI in everything, and everybody's trying to sprinkle it all over everything. But so people tend to kind of go, oh, it's just, they sort of like brush it away. It's just a thing that's, but the reality is it's eating the world, and
at a very fast rate. But
yeah.
I think I get a little into this, and I'm not some chief AI nerd by any means. I'm figuring it out like the rest of you. But like, there's true artificial intelligence that can think and learn on its own. And then there's large language models, which we will deploy and train to get to a point of usability, right? And we need to separate those two for the time being until you truly get autonomous. And they're getting close. Like, I've had conversations with like the versions of GPT, and the only reason I know it's an agent is because it's more thoughtful on time to respond. It takes a little longer. Like when you talk to a really smart person who takes time to digest their thought.
Right.
Right. As where when you deal with a real person, unfortunately, you've been almost habitually trained to like, you realize, especially with a salesperson, okay, they're just waiting for their turn to speak and they're just going to speak over me or blow it out really quick.
Yeah.
Right. Versus the AI agent is very, but you're seeing what they've done. Like
I wonder like if like when I see the AI agent kind of slow down, I'm thinking, is this thing just making me think it's thinking?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is it just, or is it really like it had it instantly, but it's just sort of pacing it. So I think like,
and I'm sure there's parameters around
Yeah.
that, but yeah, that's the only way I really know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree. There's like kind of,
isn't it bad when I'm like, this person is too nice and thoughtful and clean? This can't be real.
yeah.
Right? Where it's not. Like
It's funny to hear some of the models that are out there today that, you know, the voice autonomous agents that, and you hear the examples, there's some companies out there that have them online and the people they're talking to, drivers. And
obviously big for 3PL, right? Like
they don't even know.
Used in carrier booking.
Yeah.
Negotiating price. The AI is negotiating a higher revenue per bill than the individual carrier sales guy who's negotiating.
Well, I learned early in my career that a lot of salespeople have apprehension about the value of their own stuff.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And AI doesn't care about that.
He who talks price first loses.
Yeah.
And I would remember that getting beat into my head selling truckload.
Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm afraid to quote this $3,000 because
I'd be like, shit, he asked me how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
A lot.
Right. AI doesn't care about that. They just put it out there and
yeah.
Sometimes the customer goes, okay, yeah. But yeah. So I think, so we recognize that, it's crawling all over every process. It's being integrated in every technology, you know, all the work in transportation. We talked about it earlier, like the reason bills don't get paid. What I mean, it was so eye-opening in that role, you know, running AR. At the end of the day, the KPI that, you know, that Rob Estes cared about was getting paid, reasonably so. We've done all this work. Like, where is it? So you start following the trail and you start, you know, swimming upstream and you see everybody just throwing things into the river to kind of pollute that thing. And then you're the wastewater treatment plant at the end that has to get that invoice in condition to be paid, you know, without exception. And you start finding all these opportunities. And I'm hopeful. So that's what I'm excited about, you know, being in this new role, because we can help companies with all that, all that whole landscape, particularly in LTL, but in other industries. But that whole landscape is full of opportunity to frankly, I mean, bring ORs down, right? I mean, we're seeing ORs.
We just talked about it. That to me is the absolute bee's knees. Like,
they're starting to creep up a little bit, and
ORs?
some carriers have, you know, gotten hit a little hard over the last, you know, in Q1 and some of the, but so I think there's a real opportunity to get in there and
and I think AI presents an opportunity for LTL that wasn't there. When I think of LTL 5 to 10 years out, right? And I look at it just like, let's look at it from a pure capital investment standpoint. You're like, oh, okay, Old Dominion just posted quarterly earnings and their OR was 75. And that's like praised as the bee's knees in the industry right now. But we talked about this. Okay, what if you get AI to a point with platforms like ours that you've created an optimal user experience and they're sending you e-bill latings. Heck, they could be paying you earlier and on time because of our payments module. Now you're collecting cash faster electronically. Maybe you don't have to, maybe you can displace your traffic department, your billing department. What does OR do to a carrier when I don't have 40 people in there that I have to work because AI automated a lot of these redundant manual tasks, connected departments, and now I operate at a 50. So now do capital markets and LTL from an investment standpoint look a lot more tasty because, like, you've talked to people outside the industry who know nothing about it. They're like, you're celebrating making 10 cents on the dollar.
Right.
And then, heck yeah, brother, we were at a 98 last year.
Right.
And it's like 2 cents on the dollar and you guys celebrate that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like to be able to get ORs down and take a lot of the intensive asset-based industry we have, at least from a people standpoint, slim that down while enhancing the customer experience is a win-win for everybody. And I could see ORs getting into the 50s when AI is fully deployed and you don't have all of these hoops you got to jump through of a life cycle of a shipment, depending on the choose your own adventure story based on the amount of information supplied at the origination of this.
Yeah. I mean, you've probably got some CFOs and CEOs out there in LTL hearing this going, 50s, that you're going to get a phone call or two like, okay, yeah, let's
But
talk
to
about
me, that's like,
it in a good way,
I
right? It's
think
exciting.
LTL, and I think you might agree with me, I do believe the LTL asset-based industry is ripe for consolidation, right? You don't need, and I'm sorry, I know there's small carriers, you guys have your niches, there's things you do better than others, but for the most part, I think, and the volumes are there to have more consolidation, right? And then to me, the companies that are going to continue to excel and succeed are the ones that lean into this digitally and outpace their peer groups and figure this out first.
Yeah.
They're going to be the true LTL market leaders.
I agree, and it is hard for the small guys. It really is. I mean, because it's a network game. I was having this conversation with somebody recently, talking about some carriers that were struggling and comparing it to restaurants. It's not like you can close a few branches of your restaurant, a few locations. It's like the unprofitable ones, and boom, we're good because it's not dependent on this network. But every time every time the network gets a little weaker, right? Inherently, the overall, carrier gets a little weaker. And so it's hard for the small guys when they're up against the scale of some of the large ones. And
oh yeah,
and the investment in a lot of this technology.
But the small guys also have the benefit of I can be more nimble. I can make these decisions faster. I'm not beholden to getting this approved at a board meeting 3 months from now. So to me, it's like, there's a silver lining in every situation, but you got to leverage what you have. Like, I can see what Keith is doing at CCFS and like immediately making changes, immediately, you know what I mean, implementing things. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, was there merit to it? And can we do it better?
Yeah, it's you don't have to turn an aircraft carrier.
Yes.
Right? You turn in a PT boat. And I agree with you. Like they're more nimble. They can, whether it's branding, it's some tech, it's their CRM, whatever it is, to kind of you're right, they can create that experience a little easier. It's much harder when you have a large more sort of rooted organization.
Well, especially if you've got maybe an ownership group that's a little more tech savvy or leans into that environment because they have a higher level of understanding, right? Don't let your lack of understanding create doubt on whether you can do something or not. Like, the best way is just start learning. Right? It's like, I was sitting at my kid's school the other day for whatever high school orientation for next year. And those cheesy posters, it was like, if you want to learn, you're unstoppable.
Right.
If you have the will to learn. And it's like, it's the truth.
Yeah. I think, I think, one cool thing to see in the industry, and I've gotten around to a lot of events over the last several years, just came out of the ATA event that wrapped up yesterday, and it was a great one. It was actually my first ATA event. I was a speaker years ago.
Please tell me this. Did they have another robot drink maker there? That seems to be a theme I've seen at almost all the big shows, is some robot drink maker.
No. But I'm interested to see the robot drink maker. Maybe that's the big event that's in October. I think we're going to go to that one too. But
didn't have enough AI personality to break down my problems and
it'll make the drink, but not going to solve your relationship questions. No, I think the cool thing about the industry that if you go back, I don't know, even 20 years, there wasn't as much. You talk about learning. When I go to these events now, I see there's a lot of this, right? Like, we're here doing this on camera, but we do the same sort of thing when we pull up at SMC3.
Yep.
We got our buddy Curtis, and he's sort of like, a connector and a network in the industry. And there's all these people that are having all these great conversations. And I feel like I see carriers today that were very insular and never talked to anybody, that are in these, groups now, kind of asking questions, and they're part of maybe it's the digital LTL, the council that came together, and that's helpful. But so I do believe the industry, LTL industry at least, has come a long way in wanting to learn and get better and improve. And I think, whether you're a big carrier or a small carrier, if you're like on some sort of a journey, you ought to be in those conversations and leveraging all those insights of your peers. Because if you're in an echo chamber, maybe with leadership that isn't super tech savvy or doesn't sort of see where the puck is going, be in the room where somebody else is discussing that and try to get a sense of it. So that's good. I mean, that's a healthy thing. I think the industry is showing.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for AI and what it can do, but everybody's still just playing with it and learning.
How often do you use like ChatGPT or an AI tool on a daily basis?
I use it every day now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I even have little GPTs built for like the carrier's quarterly earnings because I don't want to listen to them. So copy and paste the transcription and make it like summarize it like I'm a 10-year-old with crayon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll have it like align their initiatives with what we're working on so I can just get a better idea. Right? I use it to scale my individual efforts.
Yes.
Not necessarily to be my personal copywriter. Like I want it to just, and you could tell when people who do it that way. You're like, this is all, you didn't even read through this. ChatGPT did it. I can find all the mistakes in it.
I've hired real copywriters
Yeah.
in my previous life, and I'd get this and I'd go, this is ChatGPT. Like I could have done this. Right?
Yes.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
I did something the other day. In fact, I shot the prompt over to Curtis. It was something I saw on LinkedIn. It was like, you basically asked ChatGPT to evaluate your use of ChatGPT and tell you like rate and kind of evaluate your usage of it. And then some things that you might be missing. And it's amazing what it comes back with. Like it gives you this whole thing, like, you're very strategic, you're in the top 2%.
It's all in how you prompt it.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I like how you can continually manipulate the prompt to fine tune it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you were about 80 out of 100 on this. Augment this, keep this, do that.
Yeah.
And then that's where I find it like an immediate personal assistant that I don't got to wait another day to get me something back.
You got to wonder. I mean,
I love it with data stuff too, because like I'm not some super spreadsheet wizard. Like I stop at like rudimentary VLOOKUP or a pivot table, and I get frustrated with that.
Yeah.
So now with all the plugins, the applications, it's really nice too. But it's the world of convenience we live in, and that's why it's like basically T-boning LTL right now.
Right.
I mean, just like when you were at Estes, they didn't have an admin department, which was like crazy to think of.
They had the bones of it in different places.
Now these LTL carriers have so much data on their hands.
Yeah.
They need full data scientist team, how they look at this stuff. This is changing the landscape. So great, AI can displace maybe a traffic team or a billing team to a low level, but now you're going to have a new investment of headcount that you're going to have to understand this new frontier.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that it's ultimately going to just wash away and solve all your problems. It's going to reduce in one area so you can double down and scale in investments in another area to make sure you're staying ahead of the curve. Otherwise, it goes back to your point. I'm trying to turn an aircraft carrier with like a rudder that would be on a rowboat. Like I can't pivot that fast.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a point about the data. I mean, when I think about the data that an LTL carrier, for example, is sitting on, I mean, tens of millions of records with multiple elements and attributes and all this kind of stuff. And I can't, it would be interesting to sort of drop that into ChatGPT as a question and go, evaluate how well LTL carriers are leveraging the data, the pile of data they're sitting on, to do all the things, right? To learn from, to learn about their customers, to learn about ways. And the answer is we're probably at like 2%.
Yeah, I see a lot of disparate data tables that don't do the best job communicating to one another to tell the whole story.
Yeah.
And that fragmentation creates chaos because you don't know what your source of truth is. Like, and I've seen that here internally where I can go to one data set, query it one way, query it another way, and get two different results. And I'm like, tear my hair out because I just want to know what the freaking source of truth is so I can baseline something, make a decision, and see how the market reacted to the decision we made.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. There's a lot. I wonder how many people are just sort of, that's it. What I'm bumping into now in different places is sort of people are getting a little nervous about what's being dumped into the vortex of
well, that's another thing you got to
right?
do. You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen because, you know what I mean? You'll muddy up the water and then you won't know who did what.
Well, but also
breadcrumbs to anything.
Also, just, a lot of this AI and a lot of this stuff and a lot of this analysis is open, right? I mean, you can create models that are closed. There's different ways to kind of leverage some of these tools, but there's a lot of people just tossing, contracts and data sets and all kinds of stuff out there that, and it's like, where is that ending up? And
that's another great use of AI is just contract management.
Yeah.
Am I billing towards the contract I agreed to, right? Because like you could take like a Caterpillar, of which Estes has probably handled for a long time, and you could have been that customer since like 96, and you have this just growing rules tariff sitting in a manila folder in the basement over years of working with this same customer, and you have no way to rationalize that easier. Is it relevant? Is there things that are in here from 96 that are biting me in the butt that don't even matter anymore? Like, how do I rationalize a lot of these contracts and agreements and stay on par and on cue? Because just like I can screw up billing a customer is no different than how they can screw tendering me the freight up.
Yeah.
They could have bad inputs, but I could also have bad inputs.
LTL companies or whatever, transportation companies, thinking about their relationships with partners and providers like us or whomever to help them solve some of these problems. Like as they're going in and all these moving parts, and they may not have the systems, and they may not have the people, and we're pivoting. And like I want to be able to talk about a little bit just the pivot we're making to tech-led business process management. It used to be about people. We'll take your people, we'll replace them with our people, and do it for less. But it's changing.
Yeah.
So
well, that's easy enough to do. All right, so we've kind of picked apart like AI, how I'm internally looking at using it, how or where LTL carriers could probably leverage it. But like I'm curious on this side, right? Now that you've come over to DDC, you're still focused on business process outsourcing, but like that model and that way you've always done things is evolving at a pretty fast clip. And if you guys are going to stay on the forefront of working with this industry and these carriers and leading the charge on that, where are you pivoting, or where are you guys seeing the next frontier of this? Like if e-bill lading gets rapid adoption, or they start seeing it and it's like, okay, it pulls away maybe some of the offshore billing I did. How are you guys augmenting or looking at the future where you're at, and how to continue to serve this industry, but do it at a high level where, you're continuing to evolve with new technology that's out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the points you brought up there was e-bill of lading, right? And so, yeah, a lot of the freight bill processing we do. Something I learned about that was, the literal translation or the literal conveyance of data from a bill of lading into a carrier system is not the final answer, right? It's like there's this translation layer or an enhancement layer, because there are business rules that sort of almost have to be extracted or considered in the way that bill is processed, that we do today, and it's part of our process. So whether we're straight up keying and then validating, or we have a digital extraction process going and then validating, I do see a place for us as customers begin to move to electronic bill of lading, for us to be a freight bill quality partner, because there's a lot of work to be done and a lot to be learned from the freight bill itself. Again, it's why I wrestled it away from operations, because it's sort of it's the beginning of everything in the system. What you're going to charge, where it's going to go, how it's going to move, all that stuff. So we're looking at ways to make sure that we can create even more value in that process, whether it's digital or whether it's paper. We don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, we process a lot of electronic bills of lading today. I mean, a lot of what we get through is it's EDI bills of lading, and we're still involved in the audit and the validation,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of business rules. So that piece, I'm actually excited about it. I originally was kind of nervous about it, but the more I understand how much still work is still to be done there, and how much value I think we can create, I think that's going to be an exciting part of our future.
Yeah, I think too many people think e-bill lading is just going to be this, okay, we'll flip the switch, turn it on, everything will work hunky-dory. But there's still a lot of hoops you got to jump through. You got to scorecard the data you're getting in the first place, measure that against how you image and W&R that to make sure it's good. Are they sending you correct origin destinations? Are the commodity line levels detailed enough, right? Can you put that into your billing tables? Can you extract that from your billing tables, get clean invoices? So there's a lot of steps in this process, right?
Yeah.
And then you have everything you can solve for with process-based outcomes. And then you have a new bucket of, now I got to just bad customer behavior I have to deal with. And now I have to have a sales-led approach or some type of communication to augment this behavior. So there is a lot that goes into it that I think people from the outside looking in don't see everything you got to do.
Yeah. So we've got a ton of transportation domain experience, particularly in LTL. So we bring that to the conversation, and we'll become a more integrated partner, I think, with a lot of our LTL clients around that process. And then from a macro sense, yeah, I mean, if you're a traditional BPO and you just say, You're in the business of, I'll take your people and we'll replace them with our people somewhere else in the world and we'll do it for less. That's going to be a hard game to win if that's your strategy going forward. So really our pivot, and we're already, well into this transition, is to a tech-led business process management solution provider. My only focus is transportation and logistics. We're in different verticals, and really the nucleus of our business is still shipping and logistics, and that's what I'm responsible for. But we're going to come into the industry with that mindset. It's like, let us sit down with you. Let us understand kind of what you're struggling with. We know a lot of these folks already, and we have good, trusted relationships, and we want to look and help them solve for more.
Yeah.
There are areas of the business that maybe we haven't talked to them about in the past. Maybe it's driver retention. Maybe it's on the Cash App processing side. Maybe they've transitioned to a Cash App software solution where they've automated quite a bit of it, but there's still the human in the loop from an exception perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe there's little pockets of audit that, they would like to get to, but they haven't, had the time or the resources, and we can do it. We're making some great investments in agentic AI and in platforms, and kind of revamping our intelligent document processing.
Yeah.
We've got an image capture solution that we have in play with a number of our clients that sort of integrated with all that. So we're going to come in with tech as the forward facing, kind of capability, but we have the people. We have the people as well with deep domain experience in transportation. So it's a change in the way, it's a more consultative approach. But no, just people replacement. We're not in that game anymore.
Yeah. I have two schools of thoughts on that for you. One, they don't necessarily go together, but one is, as an industry with the billing side, we're so fixated both on the customer and on the carrier side of the overcharge produced, right? Because when the invoice is greater than the quote, that's when a problem is throwing. What's interesting when I look at the data, let's say my average overcharge amount on hundreds of millions of dollars of invoices since I've had the tool live. The average overcharge amount sits relatively flat. It sits about $85. It'll get as high as maybe like 102, right? The average undercharge amount sits at about $25 to $35, which is crazy to me because that's a whole new opportunity. It's one thing to go, am I billing them correctly to the contract? But what if I'm underbilling because of some internal mechanism? And I am
all the time.
Literally just leaving money on the table.
It happens all the time.
And that customer is not going to be like, hey, Mike, dude, like, you underbilled me $100,000 this month. I'm not going to say a word.
Right.
That's your problem you need to fix.
Undercharges, every LTL carrier has a department. They call it different things, but they have a department that's trying to find that. And it's basically all the rules, tariffs, and all the things that you can do, they don't do all the time. It's like speeding tickets.
Yes.
I mean, someday I think...
I didn't charge you a single shipment fee this time, but when capacity picks up, I will.
Yeah. And then it's like, to the customer, it's like, well, you can't do this inconsistently. And then that becomes a problem, right? So I think... back to parcel, they nail it every time.
Yes,
because it's automated and they have the systems and the mechanisms.
It's very space based.
It's very engineered.
So
and they have tech.
Equalize the revenue for the DIMs, and you have the tech to support the workflow.
Yes, and that's happening in LTL too. You're seeing dimensioners are more pervasive.
The carriers are outpacing what the shippers have to play the same game with.
Yeah,
tenfold.
Yeah. That alone and all that information, and then that there's a huge amount of work and analytics and opportunity in there from in terms of OR improvement. Yeah.
Okay. My other thought was, and that was separate of that one, I told you that, was you were mentioning that, hey, we're augmenting what we're doing. We're looking at AI. We're still going to be embedded with these carriers. Do you see it at DDC where we talked about earlier about LTL's ripe for consolidation, and I don't want to see a lot of these smaller carriers go away, but can you shift your focus and say, hey, originally I've always worked with the big box LTL carriers because the need and demand was there, but as that need and demand shifts because they now have tools of automation they're investing in, do you now focus on that smaller regional carrier that is underserved, right, as a market and is deficit on this knowledge and capabilities to where you could really streamline that up and provide a very value add service for an underserved portion of the market and say, I'm going to take that playbook that was successful with them and help you catch up to speed.
Yes. A number of our clients are small carriers. So we don't just have the big ones. We have a number of the big ones, but we have a lot of small, great little LTL carriers that are out there in their market. And yes,
like your Roy Millers and Magnum Freights of the world and some of those.
Yes, I'm excited about getting out there, especially into that space, because I feel like we do have really deep domain knowledge. We can come in and spend a day and sit with their team and brainstorm and leverage all this experience, look at what they've got. And a lot of them too, maybe, they're staring at an investment, maybe in a platform, a workflow platform, whereas one of the larger ones have already, they've already invested in millions of dollars in a platform, and one of the little guys may not, and we can bring that to the table because we've already made some of those investments.
Because as technology gets more prevalent, it gets cheaper and more accessible downstream.
That's right.
So I would think you guys would be able to take what notoriously might have been out of their reach from a price standpoint or accessibility standpoint, and figure out how to better monetize that downstream to still really impact them.
Yeah, and offer it up as a service, right?
Yes,
it's kind of like when the pivot happened to SaaS. I mean, it made a lot of technology a lot more affordable.
Well, remember, flash drives used to be $300 for like a gig, and now they give them away as like office giveaways.
I know, and now you almost can't use them. Like
I'm afraid to stick it in my computer. Like, what's gonna happen?
Most companies don't let you. You put it in there, and you get a little orange box that says, "What are you doing?" Right?
Yeah.
So I haven't used one in a while because of that. So
nope.
Yeah.
I used to have my whole customer file on a flash drive. That's what I would move. Company to company.
Yeah, I heard this is way off topic, but it was we're all getting security is becoming a huge thing in every company, right? Digital security and trying to prevent getting hacked, and it's always the simplest way that somebody gets into a system. And
unfortunately, our good friends at Estes had to learn that a very hard way. Like,
I know,
and when I think that happens, it's like when you publicize bad news, you get more bad news across the country in that same exact category.
Yeah.
Like, I think that happens with transportation, where you'll get a malware attack, and these people that are perpetrating that attack are like, oh, this is low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, we didn't realize.
This might be an industry-wide problem.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it's like, oh, crap, it's happening to Roadrunner. It's happening to this carrier. And now everybody's on the fence with it. And it's a new sunk cost to protect yourself that's going to increase costs, which is why I think what we're doing to help carriers reduce operating costs anywhere they can, knowing that in the future, they're going to have new investments and costs that they have to incur. And if we don't solve these problems, this is going to get a lot more expensive for everybody, to the point where some carriers won't be able to operate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And security, just, to stay on that.
It's not a sexy topic, but it's a need.
It's a huge part of what we take very seriously. I mean, obviously a lot of data, flows through our operations. So security is huge. We've got, and then, all these investments. I mean, we're going to be working with clients on, on agentic AI, on the voice, chat, email side of things. We've got, of course, got our document processing technology and our image capture technology and then we've got a workflow platform that's got AI built into it to the degree that anybody wants to kind of.
Like in the future, I see you guys selling somebody an AI agent as opposed to an offshore team somewhere. It's like, hey, this is a specific AI agent. And while everybody uses the same level of agent, it could be a little more specific to your niche or service or how you do business. Am I like seeing that right?
Yeah, that might be it's kind of like AI. We see AI right now a lot of times it doesn't complete the whole journey. Maybe it'll start it.
You do a lot of the work though.
Yeah, so maybe you start with an AI agent that that's kind of level 1, and maybe level 2 is one of our people that it's got experience in it, but it's with us. And maybe level 3 is it's the carrier's very experienced problem solver who's still there, and the flow is fluid because it's on a platform that is all connected.
Yeah.
So it's taking that experience, designing it, engineering it, and using all of that. So
you're putting problems in a standard pathway so they could deviate from that to still be resolved.
Yeah, I think with BPOs, it used to be, hey, we're going to kick this work to the other side of the world and hope it goes well. Mm-hmm. Now we don't have to make that. Now it's you can integrate all that, and you can flow it, and you can all work together collaboratively. The tech, the people that maybe are some of the outsourced folks that are doing a piece of it, and then you've got the client who's actually doing that work. I look at what I used this in a recent meeting. I was in the UK last year. We're headquartered in the UK, and we had a leadership meeting last week, not last year. And I used a Chick-fil-A example, right? Chick-fil-A, and I was surprised to know they actually have it in the UK. I didn't know that, but Chick-fil-A has taken something and engineered a process to create a customer experience. The product at the end of the day really isn't.
It's actually gotten worse as they've
Probably
scaled their
has.
operations. Like
Yeah.
the number of ingredients and everything tastes the same. The quality of the food is not the same, but they're still the same experience.
Yeah, there's nothing exceptional about it. And you see examples of companies showing up doing better chicken. It's better. But they've engineered this experience, and they've looked at the process, and it just feels different when you work with them. And I think that opportunity exists. That's sort of the journey I see us on.
See, this is what I kind of say to like 3PLs that aren't continuing to double down on their technology is, and I look at it like a gas station analogy. Like I will do anything I can to not go to a Circle K or 7-Eleven because I know what I'm going to get with that. It is still a convenience store. I can conveniently access the same products at a Sheetz or a Buc-ee's or a QT. But the experience I get at a Sheetz, a Buc-ee's, or a QT is tenfold what I get going to a Circle K or a 7-Eleven, right? Where half your regulars are sleeping on the curb outside.
Do you have a Buc-ee's somewhere in your
They just opened one up. The first one in the Valley, I think they did on the east side, and they've got one off the I-10 or 303 over there that's opening up as well.
Okay. I didn't know if
my wife's like begging me to take her to a Buc-ee's, and I was like, oh my God, I travel so much. Like,
it is a pretty.
Oh, so it's not special for you anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to deal with that.
They have like 110 gas pumps or something crazy.
I know.
And they're all full.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, you make those decisions. It's not about the gas, unless the price is that radically different. But designing that experience, I think it's cool to see transportation going through that, because I think they're very consciously aware of what we're talking about here, and that and all the tech investment and all the tech players are out there kind of like teasing it out of the industry, whereas the industry just sort of sat by itself for many years and went, it's fine. Yeah. Like, this is how we operate.
That's where I think carrier APIs need to go is, can you create APIs that furnish the best experience from rating and visibility, preliminary freight charges, everything to be upfront, transparent, and honest, and create an optimal experience regardless of the user's acumen. Because each user that experiences LTL, depending on their level of understanding, is going to have a different experience. And you know this, when you don't understand something, you often don't like it. So you'll have that, I'm going to take my ball and go home mentality, right? Like even when I win a race at a race course I don't like that everybody complained about, I won, so it wasn't that bad.
Right. Yeah, and do you remember my favorite Steve Jobs quote was, a lot of people don't know what they need until you show it to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think about Estes came out with, I was still there when all this was, in fact, I was the product API product owner at the time. And it was pickup visibility. Like, nobody was doing pickup visibility. Like, tell us where,
which is wild to me, because like, I think it's
crazy
one time
that we went as long as we did with that.
UPS Freight had that, like, because they took what they had from Parcel when they bought UPS Freight, and they had it for a little bit, but then it got washed in like the acquisition to the T-Force and everything else. Yeah. They were the only ones I saw that had that early on. Then Estes doubled down on it, and I still think it's a very underserved API.
Totally.
Most platforms don't even have a place for pre-pickup visibility. 99% of the carriers don't even offer it.
Right.
So like, to me, that's a huge, I love that with Parcel, both on pickup and delivery.
Yeah.
And Dewey Pyle, somebody's that's been doing that on the delivery side for 10 years now, which is great. Hey, you're stop 3 of 10 on the truck. And like, you and I both know this. I've worked outbound and inbound operations on a dock. I've loaded P&D trailers. I load them per the zip code stops on stem time from the terminal.
Right.
So like, you have that information.
Yeah.
Some carriers are better than others based on their operation. Right. But at the end of the day, the driver takes all his DRs, still walks into that trailer, will still move some stuff around based on how he wants to drive and go to lunch that day.
Right.
But the information's there. How do you capture it and how do you furnish it?
Yeah. I love the fact that the industry is finally at a place where they see that, like, they're looking for those those places that maybe haven't been kind of illuminated before, and it's like, no, that's an opportunity. Let's go after it. And if it's one carrier who starts it, and then everybody else says, yeah, I guess we got to do that. Listen, at the end of the day, it's better for the shipper. It creates a better experience. So I'm excited in this new role to be able to work on a lot of those issues across the industry, leverage the experience I've gained over the last, certainly 26 years with Estes, but 35 in the business. And it's just, I still feel like we're at the base of the mountain with all the stuff that we can do in this business.
Well, I feel like for us, right, like I'm 20 plus years in this, you're even longer than me in this industry. It's stuff that have been needed, that you wanted, you saw on the force, right? You put on your LTL Nostradamus hat. You said, this is coming one day.
Yeah.
And it's finally here. So I think for folks like you who've been in this a long time, it's almost like a new wind in your sails, right?
Yeah.
It's more gas in your tank, for that analogy, to just be excited about it, because you put in so much work into this industry. And like, you're a lot like me, where I just want to leave this in a better place than when I started it. And I think we're finally at that opportunity to really deliver on that. But now we get to sit in the middle and help both parties deliver that value.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun place to be.
So
cool.
This is great, Mike. We've wrapped for about an hour. Leave me with some words of wisdom. I'll put you on the spot. We've had lots of trending news in the industry. Carriers are hungry for freight. You have Amazon announcements about getting into LTL. You've got FedEx decoupling their LTL offering. You've got a lot of stuff on the horizon here. Anything you want to leave us with? Anything you're seeing? Anything that's happening?
Despite what's happened with the stocks over the last, several weeks or so, and you've got, of course, tariffs, and it's got everybody kind of all spinning around trying to figure out which end is up. I'm still really, kind of like my friend Curtis Garrett. I'm still really bullish on LTL. I love the industry. I think a lot of what we talked about, it really represents opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And opportunity for a better mousetrap.
Yes.
And ultimately what that means is, you talked about ORs in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, there'll be lots of carriers right now that would love to have them in the low 80s and in the 70s. So I do see the potential for things for the industry to become more profitable. At the same time, interestingly, I think that's going to yield a better experience for the shipper. 3PLs in the middle. I think there's opportunity even for those guys to.
They're at a point of inflection and change, no different than any of us are.
Yeah. So I just think I love what I see in this business, and I'm speaking specifically with LTL. Of course, we operate in many businesses, but all across transportation and logistics. But yeah, I feel really good about the direction of things, and it's exciting to be along for the ride.
I'm with you. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm bullish on LTL and bullish on America. And I think if we just hold tight and stay the path, that better days are coming, right?
Indeed, I agree.
Mama said there'll be days like this. There'll be days that are good. So
that's right.
All right, Mike. Appreciate you hopping on, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
Sweet.